Hey guys, I'm Mr. Hark. Today I've got a genuinely crazy story about a person who raised a Bigfoot child for 40 years and no one ever knew. He raised the Bigfoot just like his son. But after 40 years, the government finally found out what he was hiding, and what they did to the man and to the Bigfoot is shocking. I won't spoil anything, just listen to the story. It's just amazing. But before we start, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with anyone who still doesn't believe in Bigfoot. It really helps the channel out. All right, let's begin. They told me not to talk about this. That's the first thing you need to know. When they finally let me out, there were two men in suits waiting at the gate. No uniforms, no badges I could see. Just the kind of men who stand too straight and don't blink enough. One of them said, "You go back up into those hills, Mr. Miller. You live out your days quiet, we'll leave you alone. You start running your mouth about what you did up there, we can make this a lot worse." He smiled when he said it, not friendly. Just like he practiced it. I nodded. I signed their paper. I told them I'd keep my head down. And then I went home and found out I didn't have a home anymore. So if I sound calm right now, if I sound like I'd made peace with it, I haven't. I'm just tired. I've been holding this in for 40 years. I'm at the age now where prison doesn't scare me as much as what I see when I close my eyes at night. You wanted the truth? This is the truth, or as much of it as I can get out without shaking. I'm 68 now. I was 25 when I walked away from my life and went into the Cascades. Back then, I was a biologist, wildlife. I did my degree, then a master's in ecology. I thought I was going to save the world, you know? Stop clear cuts, speak up for the animals. All that young idealist crap. I got a job on a research project that sounded good on paper. Population studies. Impact of logging on large mammals. It took about 6 months for me to realize the data was being used to justify the exact thing I thought I was fighting. We would collar elk, track bears, draw home ranges. And then somebody up the chain would use our numbers to say, "See? They're doing fine. Plenty of habitat. We can cut this valley and that ridge." I raised hell about it. I wrote emails I shouldn't have. Got pulled into offices, told to be a team player. I watched a colleague fudge numbers under pressure. I watched a report get rewritten so it would fit what a timber company needed it to say. One day I walked into the lab, looked around, and realized I did not trust a single person in that room to tell the truth if it cost them their job. So I quit, just like that. Packed the essentials. Sold what I could, and I headed for the mountains I'd been studying on paper. People like to romanticize that kind of life. Off-grid. Cabin in the woods. They picture sunsets and coffee on the porch and a dog sleeping by the fire. What it is, most days, is work. Every day you're chopping wood or fixing something or hauling water. I set up a small cabin off an old spur road, about 2 hours from the nearest town, if you knew where to step and didn't get lost. The first one was just a glorified shack. I improved it over the years. Added a proper stove, collected rainwater off the roof. Later on, when I started guiding tourists and teaching survival, I bought a couple of solar panels, kept a radio, a small light. But for the most part, it was just me and the trees and the creek. I'd go into town maybe once every month. Buy salt, flour, coffee, the things I couldn't make or grow. People there got used to me. Sam from up the mountain, the weird biologist who could find his way back home in a blizzard. I wasn't lonely. Not at first. The woods were noisy in their own way. Birds, squirrels, wind, the creek. You talk to yourself. You hum. You keep your mind occupied. And then one day, about 3 years in, the forest got quiet. That's the first part I still can't explain away. It was late spring. Snow was melted off the lower slopes, but the peaks were still white. The creek by my cabin was high from runoff, brown and fast, louder than usual. I remember that day because it was one of those rare warm ones where the air felt soft instead of sharp. I was checking snares along the creek, seeing if I'd caught anything worth skinning. I had my pack on, a small first aid kit, my knife, and my old 30-30, same as always. The woods sounded normal at first. Jays, a distant woodpecker, the rushing of water. Then it was like somebody hit a mute button. No birds, no insects. Even the creek seemed quieter, which doesn't make sense, but that's how it felt. Like the sound had dropped behind glass. I stopped walking. You learn to pay attention to that kind of silence up there. It usually means a predator is close. Bear, cat, sometimes a big coyote pack. I scanned the tree line. Nothing, no movement, no smell, just that heavy stillness pressing on my ears. And then I heard it. At first I thought it was a person, a human scream, high and broken. Then it turned into this choking sound, like someone trying to yell with their mouth full of mud. It came from downstream, near a bend where the bank undercut the roots. I remember thinking, some idiot fell in. I'd pulled drunk hunters out of that creek before. Tourists who thought it was a good idea to stand on wet rocks in cheap boots. I started running. The sound got worse as I got closer. Less like a scream, more like a gurgling howl. I could hear thrashing, splashing. I came around the bend and saw the bear first. Big black bear, probably a male, about maybe 200 pounds, standing half in the water, one paw braced on a mess of roots. It was swiping down into this tangle of brush and mud at the edge of the creek, dragging something up, then hammering it back down. I've seen bears hunt. They can be brutal. But this looked different, frantic, angry. I shouted. Just instinct. Hey, get out of here. I waved my arms, put my rifle up, not firing yet, just trying to startle him. The bear looked up at me, snorted, then went right back to what he was doing. Whatever he had down there was still moving, still making that horrible noise. I fired a round into the bank a couple of feet to his right. He jerked his head up again. This time he lunged away from the water, scrambled up the slope, and disappeared into the trees. The brush shook, then went still. I kept the rifle up, heart hammering so hard my vision blurred at the edges. The thing in the creek kept making that sound. Quieter now, wet, weak. I stepped down the bank, boots sliding on mud, one hand holding the rifle, the other grabbing roots. And that's when I saw him. If I say Bigfoot, you get a picture in your head right away. Forget that picture. Forget the big hulking silhouette crossing the road in the fog. That's not what I saw. I saw a kid, a big kid, yeah. Too big, too strong, too wrong for my brain to file under anything normal. But the first clear thought I remember having was, that's a child. He was tangled half in the water, half under the roots. The bear had torn up his left side pretty bad, fur matted with blood, skin showing underneath in long, raw strips. His leg was twisted under him at an angle that made my own knee hurt just looking at it. He wasn't standing like a person, more like a gorilla you'd see in a zoo, kind of hunched, but he had this human shape in his hands, in his face. That face is burned into me. Dark skin under wet hair, wide nose, heavy brow, and those eyes, they weren't animal eyes. Not the way I'd studied them anyway. They looked at me the way scared kids look at adults. Like maybe you're the one who can stop the pain. He tried to pull away when I got closer, but he was wedged under the roots and half drowned. He let out this sound. Not a word, not anything I could recognize, but it rose and fell like someone begging. I could have walked away. I know that. I could have fired another shot into the air, scared him further back, and left him for dead. I could have told myself it was just a hurt animal and I don't interfere. That's what a smart man would have done. Instead, I slung my rifle, climbed down, and put my hands on him. I don't remember every second of that first hour. Shock does that. I know I got my arms under his shoulders and tried to lift. I know he was heavy as hell, solid, muscle and bone. He grabbed at me, not to hurt, more like to hold on. His fingers were thick and rough, nails black and cracked. When I managed to haul him out from under the roots, he collapsed on the bank and just lay there, gasping. His chest rose and fell like a bellows. Every breath made a broken whine. Up close, I could see he was younger. The proportions were off from an adult. Head a little big for his body, hands and feet almost too big, like he hadn't grown into them yet. I put my hand out, slow, like you would with a scared dog. He flinched, then stilled. Let me touch his shoulder. Easy, I said. Stupid thing to say. He didn't know English. Didn't know me. Easy, easy. I'm not gonna hurt you. He blinked. Water ran out of his eyelashes. A low sound came out of his chest, like a question. I checked the wounds the way I would with a bear or a wolf I'd tranquilized. The bear had raked him along his ribs, deep enough that I could see muscle. The leg, I didn't know if it was broken, dislocated, or just sprained, but he couldn't put weight on it. There were punctures around his hip where teeth had sunk in. He should have been dead already. The amount of blood on the mud made my stomach clench. I did a calculation in my head. How far to the cabin? What I had in my first aid kit? How much I could lift? How far I could carry dead weight? He grabbed my sleeve then, just pinched it between his fingers, but he held on. His eyes wouldn't leave my face. That was the moment, right there. Once he did that, there was no way I was walking away. It took me all afternoon to get him back. I wrapped him in my tarp as best I could. I made a sling, looped it over my shoulders, and dragged him where I couldn't carry. When the trail narrowed, I half walked, half crawled, letting him lean his weight into me. He tried to stand more than once. Each time he cried out and fell. That cry, it wasn't human, but it was close enough that my body reacted like it was. It went right through me. We stopped often. Sometimes just so I could breathe. Sometimes because he'd start shaking and I'd have to calm him down. He would grab at nearby trees with those big hands, leaving bloody fingerprints on the bark. By the time we saw the cabin roof through the trees, the light was going. Getting him inside was another ordeal. I had to half lift, half push him through the door. He banged his shoulder on the frame, let out this offended grunt that almost made me laugh, except nothing about it was funny. I cleared space on my own bed platform, shoved my blankets aside, and got him laid out there. He barely fit. His feet hung over the edge. For a minute, I just stood there, hands on my knees, breathing hard. I had brought a wounded, something into my one safe place. I had no plan beyond that. Then training took over. I got hot water on the stove, pulled out bandages, alcohol, the small stash of antibiotics I kept for emergencies. I boiled what I could. I washed my hands until the water went cold and then washed them again. He watched me, eyes tracking every move. When I went to clean the wounds, he tensed. I held up my hands, showed him the cloth, touched it to my own arm first, then pointed at his ribs. He made a short, questioning sound, then turned his head away like he was bracing for it. He didn't fight me. He hissed when the alcohol hit raw flesh. Low and deep, teeth clenched, his fingers clawed at the wood. He could have thrown me across the room with one good swing, I'm sure of that now. He didn't. I wrapped his side as best I could. Packed herbs I knew were good for infection, yarrow, plantain, around the worst of it. Crushed aspirin, mixed it with water, and got it between his lips. He coughed, almost spit it out. I mimed drinking, exaggerated it. He blinked, swallowed. The leg I splinted as if it were a human leg. I wasn't sure of the anatomy, but the bones lined up enough that I could guess. When it was over, he lay there panting. His eyes were half closed. Every few breaths, he let out a soft sound that reminded me of a child whimpering in their sleep. I sat on the floor across from him, back against the wall, and just watched him for a long time. I didn't say the word Bigfoot out loud that first night. It floated around my head, bumping into other words like juvenile hominid, an unknown primate, and I'm losing my mind. Mostly, I just thought, God help me, what have I done? I didn't sleep much. Every creak of the cabin, every gust of wind against the walls, I'd jerk awake, half expecting to see him standing over me, teeth bared. He never moved from that bed. Around dawn, when the first pale light slipped in through the small window, I got up and checked his breathing. It was steadier. The bandages were soaked through, but the bleeding had slowed. He opened his eyes when I touched his arm. They were brown, not red, not glowing, just dark brown, like a person's. We looked at each other for a long moment. No sound, just two animals stuck in a box together, watching to see what the other one would do. I put my hand flat on my chest. "Sam," I said. Then I pointed at him. He scrunched his nose like he didn't get it. I tried again. "Sam," tapped my chest. point at him. He made a sound. Short, 2 syllables, kind of low and rough like Then he tapped his own chest with the back of his knuckles. I don't know if he meant to give me his name or just mimic what I did, but in my head that was the moment he became a he and not an it. I got up and made oatmeal, the cheap kind. A little salt, a little sugar. When I brought the bowl over, he yanked himself up more than I would have liked, his eyes locked on the steam. On the spoon, he sniffed at it, took a taste off the spoon, blinked, surprised, then opened his mouth like a baby bird. I fed him like that, spoon by spoon. He dribbled some down his chin, snorted at the heat. It was clumsy and awkward and probably a bad idea. It felt weirdly normal. I had no idea then that I would still be feeding him in one way or another almost 40 years later. I could spend hours telling you about those first days. Every little sign of trust, every time he flinched and then didn't. But we'd be here all night. So I'll tell you this, he lived. I don't know how, by all rights he shouldn't have. Infection should have taken him. The leg should have crippled him. But day by day, he got stronger. He started sitting up, then crawling to the corner to piss in the bucket I set there. He watched everything I did. When I sharpened my knife, he would pretend to do it with a piece of wood. When I split kindling, he'd follow the motion with his hands. He didn't talk. Not in any way you'd recognize. He had sounds though, a whole range of grunts and whistles and low murmurs. I started to recognize patterns. A short, questioning chirp when he wanted to know what something was. A soft, throat-deep hum when he was comfortable. I never heard him make the scream from the creek again, not like that. After a week or so, I tried letting him outside. That first step out the door, he froze in the threshold. The light hit him and he squinted, lifted his face to the breeze. You could see his nose working, smelling things I couldn't even imagine. Then he looked back at me. I nodded, stepped out first, held out my hand. He ducked through the doorway, hunched, like he was afraid of hitting his head. His fur had started to dry out by then. In the daylight, I could see the color better. Dark brown with reddish tones, especially around his shoulders. He took a few steps, then reached back and grabbed my sleeve. Not hard, just to anchor himself. We stood there together in front of the cabin, listening to the woods. Birds were back, squirrels. The whole normal chorus. The forest didn't go silent for him. It did later for other things, but not for him. I didn't plan to keep him, not at first. I told myself I was just getting him through the worst of it. Once he healed, he'd go back to wherever he came from. Back to his family, his kind. That assumption held me together those first months. The idea that this was temporary, that there were others out there. He wasn't my responsibility. I was just a nurse, except he never went anywhere. I started leaving the door open during the day. He could have walked out and not come back. He never did. He would go a little way into the trees, always where he could still see the cabin, and then circle back. At night, he slept in the corner opposite my bed, curled up on himself like a dog back against the wall. We figured out ways to talk, of a sort. I'd point at things, say the word, fire, water, fish. He'd make a sound and we'd repeat it back and forth. Sometimes, if I was out in the woods and I whistled a certain pattern, he'd answer with that same soft rising hum I'd heard the first morning. I know how this sounds. I do. People hear this and they think I'm making it up, or I'm crazy, or I'm remembering wrong after all these years. All I can tell you is what it felt like, raising a kid who wasn't human but might as well have been. He learned faster than any child I've ever seen. I showed him how to set a snare. A week later, he'd improved it, adding a little branch to guide the rabbit's path. I taught him how to smoke fish, and he started bringing wood that burned slower, lasted longer. I showed him which berries were safe. After one bad experience with a stomachache, he never picked the wrong kind again. He never spoke English, but he understood more than people give him credit for. More than a lot of people I've met, to be honest. He got big too. By the time I was 45, he stood a head taller than me when he straightened all the way up. His shoulders barely fit through the cabin door. I never named him, not the way you name a pet. He had a sound he'd make when thumping his chest, almost like a quick hot-rah. I started thinking of him as Ruh in my head. But most of the time, he was just him, the boy, kid, son, when I forgot to guard my tongue. That's what he was to me, not a specimen, not a myth. My son. You're probably wondering why I never told anyone. That's the question the agents kept coming back to in those little gray rooms. Why didn't you contact the university, Mr. E. Miller? Why didn't you alert Fish and Wildlife? Why didn't you document the specimen? They'd slide a pen and paper across the table like that would fix everything, like they could file this under some report number and move on. I had a lot of answers I didn't say out loud. I'd seen what happened to animals that were of interest. I'd watched bears get tranquilized, collared, prodded, bled, fitted with devices, then released into a habitat that was about to be bulldozed. I knew what a discovery like him would mean to people with money and power. Not wonder, not respect, capture, dissection, study, ownership. But if I'm being completely honest, it wasn't just that. He trusted me. He'd sit on the floor, cross-legged, while I showed him how to tie a knot or skin a rabbit. He'd tilt his head, brow furrowed, concentrating. Sometimes he'd reach out and fix my grip the way I'd fixed his. He'd bring me food. That started around the time he hit what I guess you'd call late teens. He got faster, stronger, started ranging farther from the cabin on his own. He'd come back with a fish in each hand, proud as anything, drop them by the fire, and look at me like, see, I can do it too. Once, in winter, when a storm kept me in bed with a fever, he never left my side. I remember that week clearer than some whole years. I must have been 56 then. Old enough that getting sick hit harder, but still thinking I was invincible because the mountains hadn't killed me yet. It started as a cough. Nothing big. I'd had plenty of those. Then it turned into something that sat heavy in my chest. Every breath tore at my lungs. I'd get dizzy if I sat up too fast. The snow was deep outside, maybe 3 feet. The path to the creek was a trench. I'd shoveled it earlier in the week, but by the time the fever hit, I couldn't keep up. I remember lying there, sweat soaking the blankets, the fire a blurred orange patch in my vision. My head hurt like someone had driven a spike behind my eyes. He was there, sitting on the floor at first, hugging his knees, just watching me. When I started shivering, he stood up. He piled more wood on the fire. Clumsy at first, then better. He dragged extra blankets from his corner and piled them on top of me. Sometimes I'd wake up and he'd be gone. Panic would spike, then I'd hear him outside crunching through snow, see his shape move past the window. He'd come back with things, fish, berries he must have dug up from under the snow, handfuls of some pine needles he'd watched me use for tea when I had a cold. I remember his big fingers trying to grip the kettle handle without burning himself. The look of concentration on his face as he poured the hot liquid into a cup and shoved it carefully into my hands. He didn't make a sound that whole week, not unless he thought I was asleep. Every time I woke, he was there. He'd taken care of me like I'd taken care of him. The balance shifted then. We weren't just caretaker and dependent. We were family. You don't call the government on family. The years after that blurred together in a good way. We had our routines. In the summer, we'd guide the occasional group of tourists. Well, I guided them. He stayed far back, watching from the tree line. He knew to avoid the main trails, the viewpoints, the campsites. I drilled that into him from the start. If we heard voices, he melted into the brush. I pretend I hadn't heard the soft thud of his retreat. In the fall, we'd hunt. He got better at stalking than I ever was. He could move through dry leaves without a sound. I started leaving the rifle behind more often. In the winter, we'd hunker down. Extra firewood, smoked meat, dried berries. He handled the heaviest work, hauling logs, breaking ice. I handled the fiddly tasks, repairs, sharpening, planning. When I turned 64, I started noticing signs that someone else was in the woods, boot prints, cigarette butts, even engines late at night where there shouldn't have been any. I kept trying to ignore it until one evening, while we were checking snares, we heard clear wood knocks coming from 2 different directions. He He stopped, listened, and answered them with knocks of his own. When something far off called back, he looked at me, not afraid but hopeful, and I realized I had been his whole world for almost 40 years, and somewhere out there, there were others like him. I should have been happy. Instead, I was terrified, because if I could hear them, so could anyone with ears and a reason to listen. Things escalated pretty quick after that. Within a month, I saw the first uniform. Sheriff's deputy, young, clean boots, new jacket. He was standing at the trailhead where I usually left my old pickup when I had to drive down. I'd parked a little away, as usual, partially hidden in the brush. I only came in every few weeks, so it wasn't like he saw me every day. But that day, he was there when I stepped out of the trees with my pack. "Afternoon," he said, friendly enough. "Afternoon," I said back. "You Sam Miller?" I felt a little chill then. I hadn't done anything wrong, not in a way the law cares about. But out there, when somebody in uniform knows your name and you don't know theirs, it sets your nerves off. "Yeah," I said. "Who's asking?" He tapped his badge, gave me his name. I don't remember it now. Just another smooth face with mirrored sunglasses. He said there had been reports, strange noises, people seeing something big near the old roads. He asked if I'd seen any large animals acting aggressive. I played dumb. I told him about the usual bear routes, the cougars I knew of, gave him tips on not leaving garbage at campsites if he wanted fewer visits from raccoons. He took notes like he cared. Then he slipped in the question. "Any unusual wildlife? Two-legged? Tall, hairy?" He chuckled like it was a joke, but his eyes were sharp behind the lenses. "Nope," I said. "Just the usual bipeds from town littering up the place." He laughed. "Wrote something down anyway." After that, I started seeing them more often. Deputies. State police. Guys in hunting camo who didn't move like real hunters. Their clothes looked right, but their boots were too clean. Their eyes stayed on the tree line instead of the ground. Once, I came over a ridge and saw 3 of them in a drainage below, standing around a patch of mud like it was a crime scene. From where I was, I could see the tracks they were staring at. Big, bare, too long for a human, too wide. He'd been careless that day. Or maybe just not thinking about what could happen if the wrong person saw. I watched one of the men kneel and place a measuring tape next to the print. Another took photos with a camera that had a huge lens. The third just looked around, scanning the trees. I dropped flat behind a log and didn't move until they went back the way they came. When I got home that evening, he was already there. Sitting by the fire, sharpening a stick. He looked up at me and I could see it in his face. He knew something was off. I didn't yell at him. God knows I wanted to. Instead, I sat down across from him and I tried to explain the best I could. I pointed toward the valley where they'd been. I mimed walking. 3 men. I showed him the camera, the measuring. I drew an outline of his footprint in the dirt and then put a big X through it. He watched my hands. Brow nodded. Then he did something he'd never done before. He reached out and covered the drawing of his own print with his palm, pressed down hard, smearing it into nothing. He understood. It just turned out to be too late. The next time I saw law enforcement in the woods, they didn't bother with jokes. It was maybe a month after the prints. Late fall, windy. The kind of day where branches creak and you keep an eye up as much as down. I was bringing back a load of firewood I'd cut at a deadfall about half a mile from the cabin. I had the sled rope over my shoulder, leaning into it, thinking about nothing more dangerous than how much my back hurt. I heard footsteps behind me. At first, I thought it was him. He moves quiet when he wants to, but not silent. There's always a little weight in it. "About time," I said over my shoulder. "You picked the easy days, huh, Mr. Miller?" I stopped cold, turned. 2 men, uniforms this time, sheriff's department. One older, big belly under his vest. One younger, the sane kid from the trailhead. They looked out of place in that spot. City faces, bright badges against dark trees. I kept my expression neutral. The way you do with bears. Don't let them smell fear. "You boys are lost," I said. The older one smiled without warmth. "We're exactly where we're supposed to be. Mind if we walk with you a ways?" It wasn't a question. I shrugged, started walking, dragging the sled. They fell into step beside and behind me, bracketing me. "We've had more reports," the older one said. "Campers hearing things. Loud knocks, strange calls. Couple of folks say they saw a large individual, dark, tall. Might be a bear, might not." "Sounds like bears," I said. "They stand up." "People don't expect that." He made a non-committal noise. "Funny thing, this bear leaves footprints." I didn't answer. "We know you've been out here a long time," he went on. "You see more than most. We're just trying to keep folks safe." "A lot of folks would be safer staying home," I said. The younger one snorted a laugh. The older shot him a look and he shut up. After a bit of silence, the older man said it. "You got anyone living up here with you, Mr. Miller?" My heart did something in my chest, a little misfire. "Nope," I said, "just me." "No family?" the younger one chimed in. "No visitor?" The way he said visitor made my skin crawl. I stopped walking then, turned to face them. "You got a reason to be asking me that?" I said. I let some of my irritation show. "Old man, cranky, tired. Easy role to play." The older cop held my gaze a second too long. Then he smiled again. "Just covering bases. You hear or see anything unusual, you let us know, all right?" "Sure," I said. "If Bigfoot comes in for coffee, you boys will be first to know." They left it at that, for the moment. But the question was out there now, hanging in the air between those trees. And I knew with the kind of cold certainty you only get once you're in real trouble that they weren't going to give up. I started making plans. Up until that point, I'd always figured whatever we had going, we could keep going forever. Just stay careful, stay quiet. Let the world down there scream at itself while we listen to the creek. Now, I sat up at night, staring at the door, thinking about what I would do when they came with more than questions. I thought about leaving. Just walking away from the cabin, deeper into the range, find another valley, another cave, another spot nobody visited. I knew a few candidates, places I'd only been once or twice that felt older, quieter, like the world had forgotten them. Problem was, he didn't know those places. He knew our valley. Moving would mean teaching him whole new patterns, whole new dangers. And if they were already tracking us, and I had to assume they were, moving might be exactly what they wanted us to do. A trap. The night after that walk with the deputies, I went outside to take a piss. Cold air, clear sky, my breath puffing in front of me. I stood there, listening. No owls, no distant trucks, just the creek. On my way back in, I noticed something on a tree about 20 yards from the cabin. At first I thought it was just a knot of bark that caught the starlight wrong. Then I got closer and saw the little metal lens tucked into the trunk. Game camera, the kind hunters use, or researchers, or other people. There was a smear of mud below it where somebody had slipped and caught themselves. Fresh. They'd been here, right up to my doorstep while we'd been inside. My stomach dropped, my vision tunneled. I walked right past him when I came back in. He was sitting by the fire, legs stretched out. He looked up, made a questioning sound. I didn't answer. I went straight to my pack, pulled out my knife, and went back outside. The camera came off the tree with a couple of good pre's. I took it inside, set it on the table, and stared at it. Part of me wanted to smash it right there. Part of me wanted to see what they'd seen. In the end, I wrapped it in cloth and put it in a box, shoved it under the bed. I didn't have the tools to pull the card without risking breaking it. I figured if I destroyed it and they came looking, that would be worse. He watched all this, eyes moving between me and the box. I pointed at the door, at the trees, at the camera. "Men," I said, "watching." He frowned. Then he did something I'd never seen. He made himself small. He hunkered down, arms wrapped around his knees, lowering his head, like a child getting scolded. It hurt to see. I went over and put a hand on his shoulder. "Not your fault," I said. "Mine. We should have been more careful." He made a soft sound, almost a whine, pressed his forehead against my chest just for a second. I knew then what I had to do. I didn't sleep the night before I sent him away. He did. deep and solid, his back against the wall, the firelight flickering on his fur. He trusted me to handle whatever came. That was the worst part. At first light, I boiled coffee, drank it black, hands shaking. I packed a pack for him, jerky, dried berries, a flint, some cord, things he'd seen me use 100 times, things he could copy if he needed. He watched me, head tilted, clearly sensing something was off. When I shouldered my own pack and picked up my walking stick, he stood. He always moved slower in the mornings, stretching, getting the kinks out. This time he was ready before me. I pointed at the door. "Come," I said. He came. We didn't talk much, not that we could, but even his usual little chirps and hums were absent that morning. We went up, higher than we usually went on a normal day, past the line where the trees got shorter and the air thinner. He stayed close, eyes flicking between me and the surroundings. After a couple of hours, we dropped into a hidden basin I'd found years before. No trails in or out unless you knew exactly where to go. Steep walls on 3 sides. A narrow slot where a stream cut through rock on the 4th. There was a cave there. Not big. Maybe 20 feet deep. Dry, with old soot stains on the ceiling. Something had used it a long time ago. I'd always thought of it as my emergency bolt hole. The place I'd go if fire or flood or something worse made the cabin unsafe. Now, it was going to be his. He went in ahead of me, sniffing, touching the walls. He looked back, eyes wide with interest. New place, new puzzle. I took the pack off, set it near the entrance. He glanced at it, then at me. I pointed at the pack, at the cave. At him. "Here," I said. "You. Here." He looked confused. I tried again. I mimed men with guns, pointed back toward our valley. I mimed them coming to the cabin. Then I pointed here, shook my head, made a pushing away motion with both hands. His eyes narrowed. He stepped closer. He grabbed my sleeve, not hard but firm. We'd had disagreements before. Times he'd wanted to follow me into town and I'd refused. Times I'd kept him back from a campsite. This was different. He could feel it. I cupped the back of his head, fingers sinking into the thick hair. For the first time since he was small, I tried to pull him into a hug. He resisted at first. Then he sagged, letting his forehead rest against mine. His breath fanned across my face. Warm. Familiar. "You have to stay," I whispered. Useless words. I said them anyway. They know. They're coming. If they see you, they'll take you. They'll hurt you. You stay here. You hear me? You stay. You hear any engine, you go deeper. No fire, no noise. Just stay alive, kid. That's all I need you to do. He made a sound then. I can't really write it. It was low, almost a rumble, with a little hitch in it. The closest I can come in human terms is, no. He touched his chest, touched mine, shook his head. I swallowed hard. My throat hurt. "This is the only way," I said. "You can't fight bullets. You can't fight what they'll bring. I can stall them, I can lie, but I can't do that if you're standing there." I stepped back, held out my hand, flat, fingers spread. Our signal for stop. He froze. I walked backward, out of the cave. Every step felt wrong. At the entrance, I pointed at the back wall again. "Stay," I said. "Please." He took one step forward. I raised my hand. He stopped. His eyes were wet. I don't know if that's possible biologically. I don't care. That's how I remember it. I turned then. If I'd stayed another second, I would have broken. I would have said, "Screw it, let them come, let them take us both." I walked away without looking back. The hardest thing I've ever done. Halfway up the slope, I couldn't help it. I checked over my shoulder. He was standing in the cave mouth, just a shadow in the rock, watching me go. He didn't follow. They came the next morning. I barely had time to get a pot of coffee going before I heard the trucks, plural, engines grinding low as they climbed the old road. I stepped out onto the porch and counted. 2 sheriff's trucks, 1 unmarked SUV. Behind them, farther down, a larger vehicle I recognized from my lab days, a mobile command unit. Antennas. Satellite dish. White. No markings. I had enough time to think, well, that's that, before the first door slammed. They came up the path in a line, deputies in front, hands near their weapons but not drawing, men in plain clothes behind, one woman with them, hair in a tight bun, carrying a folder. "Morning, Mr. Miller," the older deputy called. "Mind if we talk?" "Looks like you brought enough people to make it a party," I said. The woman stepped forward. "I'm Dr. Harris," she said. "We're working with the State Wildlife Office. We have some questions about unusual activity in this area." She had that flat, calm tone I knew from meetings and presentations, the voice of someone who's already decided what's true and is just walking you toward it. "Sure," I said. "Ask away." They didn't start with accusations. They never do. They asked about sounds, tracks, reports. They asked where I'd been the last few weeks. They asked if I'd noticed anyone camping nearby. I lied smoothly. You get good at it when you've had 40 years of practice not saying the word Bigfoot. Then the younger deputy did something that made my blood run cold. He held up a clear evidence bag. Inside was a little clump of dark hair. "You recognize this?" he said. It looked like his. Coarse, dark, too long for a human beard or head. I kept my face blank, shrugged. "Could be anything," I said. "Bear, moose, hell, half the guys in town shed worse than that." The woman, Dr. Cart. Harris slid a couple of photos out of her folder, laid them on the railing between us. One was a shot of the cabin, taken from a distance, my silhouette in the doorway. His, behind me, half in shadow. You could only see the outline of his shoulder, the slope of his head. But it was unmistakable once you knew. The other was from the game camera. Nighttime, black and white. He was stepping past the tree, looking right at the lens, eyes reflecting like an animal's in a flash. My stomach clenched so hard I thought I was going to throw up right there. "We've been monitoring this area for some time," she said. "We know you're not alone up here." I didn't say anything. I could feel my heart in my throat. "Where is he?" the older deputy asked. No more joking now, no more polite. "I live alone," I said. My voice sounded thin to my own ears. "You got reflections, tricks of the light." "Mr. Miller," Harris said, and her voice softened just a hair, like she was trying compassion on for size. "This is not about punishing you. You may have put yourself at risk, but we understand people can get attached. We just need to know where the specimen is so we can handle this properly, before somebody gets hurt." I thought about him in that cave. I thought about the way he covered his own footprint in the dirt with his hand. I shook my head. "There is no specimen. You boys want to search my cabin? You go ahead. You won't find anything but a grumpy old man and bad coffee." They did search. Of course they did. They went through my cupboards, my bed, my packs. They took my knives, my maps. They pulled up floorboards looking for hidden doors. They didn't find him. He was miles away, in a hole in the rocks, listening to the sounds of the world change. When they were done, the older deputy looked genuinely pissed off. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said. "We have you dead to rights, photos, hair, tracks, witness statements." "Then charge me," I said. "Otherwise, get off my porch." So they charged me, not with harboring some unknown primate. You can't put that on a form. They hit me with everything else they could think of. Obstruction, resisting, interfering with an investigation. They said I'd pointed a weapon at an officer. That was a lie, but who are they going to believe? They cuffed me in my own doorway and walked me past the trees where he'd learned to climb. Just before they pushed my head down to get me into the SUV, I heard it. Far off. So faint I might have imagined it. 3 knocks, then silence. Jail is jail, whether you're 20 or 64. The food is bad. The light never feels like real daylight. The sounds never stop. They put me in county first, holding. Then they moved me to a bigger facility, somewhere I didn't recognize. I saw a lot of white walls and gray doors. I saw more paper than I'd seen in decades. Forms, statements, waivers. They asked the same questions over and over. How long has the subject been with you? Did you ever take samples? Have you had any sexual contact with the subject? That one almost made me break my calm. I laughed in their faces. The idea of reducing him to some lab animal they could ask that about. They asked who else knew. Had I shown anyone? Had I contacted media, universities? Every time, I gave them the same answer. I live alone. I've seen bears do weird things. People drink too much in the woods and see shadows. You're chasing a ghost. Sometimes they'd play nice, offer me coffee, mention my age, my health. Sometimes they'd try to scare me, talk about long sentences, mental health evaluations, being declared incompetent. One guy in a suit tried a different tactic. He laid out photos of the mountains, satellite shots, thermal images. "We know there are more," he said quietly. "You're not protecting him. You're condemning his entire kind. They can't stay hidden forever. Not with drones, not with cameras everywhere. If you cooperate, we can control the situation, make it humane." I stared at the thermal images. Bright spots in dark valleys. 4, maybe 5. Moving in a line. He slid one closer to me. "Is this your son?" he asked. The word hit me like a punch. I pushed the photo back. "I've got nothing to say," I told him. After a while, they stopped sending the nice ones. They stopped sending anyone but a board guard to tell me my lawyer, some overworked public defender, was making no progress. I sat on my bunk. I thought about him, wondered if he'd stayed put, wondered if he'd starved because I'd drilled it into him too hard to avoid leaving sign. 5 months. Maybe 6. Time gets weird in there. And then, one morning, they opened my door and told me to pack up. "Case dismissed," the guard said. Lucky you. I didn't feel lucky. I expected another interrogation room, another lecture, another set of forms to sign. Instead, they handed me a plastic bag with my clothes in it and walked me out to the gate. That's where I found the 2 men in suits waiting, the ones I told you about at the start. They didn't show me badges, didn't give names, just stood there and made their threat sound like a friendly piece of advice. "Go home, Mr. Miller. Stay put. Enjoy your retirement. You go back to living like a ghost, we'll forget this ever happened. You start talking out of turn, we won't." I asked them right there, "What did you do to him?" First time I'd acknowledged out loud that there was a him to talk about. The taller one didn't blink. "I don't know what you're referring to," he said. "And if I were you, I'd keep it that way." They walked away, got into a car with tinted windows, drove off. Just like that. No more questions, no follow-up, nothing. That scared me more than anything before. Because if they didn't need me anymore, it meant they had what they wanted. The road back up the mountain felt different. Maybe it was me. Prison changes the way you see open space. The sky felt too big. The air felt too clean. But there were other changes I couldn't blame on my head. New signs at the turnoff. Road closed for maintenance. No trespassing. Government property. The kind of signs they put up when they want to keep people out without saying why. I drove past them. The old spur road to my cabin had fresh tire tracks. Heavy ones. Not just pickups. Something larger. Half a mile in, I saw the first scar. A patch of hillside stripped bare. Trees toppled. Looked like a landslide at first. Then I saw the straight cuts. The tracks of machinery. My heart started pounding. When I pulled into the little clearing where my cabin had stood for almost 40 years, there was nothing there. No porch, no roof, no walls. Just a blackened rectangle on the ground. Charred beams. Twisted metal where my stove had been. I got out of the truck and just stood there, smelling ash and wet earth. It had rained recently. The burn was old enough that the edges had gone from black to gray. I walked to where my bed had been, kicked at a piece of half-burned board. It crumbled. The creek still ran, same sound, same bend. Everything else was gone. They didn't just want him. They wanted to erase the life that had made him more than a thing. I sank down on a log that had survived the blaze and put my head in my hands. For a long time, I didn't move. Then I stood up and did the only thing that made sense. I went looking for him. I didn't take the truck any farther. If they were still around, if they had cameras or sensors, I didn't want to give them an engine note to track. I grabbed a pack from the cab, threw in water, a few snacks I'd bought in town, a map I barely needed. I started walking. My body protested. Months of confinement had softened me. My lungs burned. My knees screamed on the steeper slopes. I kept going. The basin with the cave was a long way on foot, even when you're in good shape. It took me the better part of the day. All the way there, I looked for sign. I saw fewer animals than I should have. No deer, no fresh bear scat. The birds were quieter, not silent, but less. Here and there, I saw flags tied to branches, bright orange tape fluttering in the breeze. Survey markers, or something else. Once, in a muddy patch near a game trail, I found boot prints, deep, several sizes. Someone had been hauling heavy loads through there recently. I stepped in them, walking heel to toe to blur the edges. Old habits. By the time I crested the last rise and looked down into the hidden basin, the light was slanting low. The cave mouth was a dark, familiar oval in the rock. Relief hit me so hard, I had to grab a tree to steady myself. He could still be in there, waiting. Maybe pissed off, maybe scared, but alive. "Kid," I shouted, forgetting every caution. My voice cracked. "Ruh, it's me," only the echo answered. I half slid, half ran down the slope. My breath sawed in my chest. My heart felt like it was trying to punch through my ribs. At the cave mouth, I stopped. The ground was disturbed, not in the soft, natural way of paws and feet, in the sharp, angular pattern of boots and equipment. There were marks in the dirt, drag marks, parallel lines, like something heavy had been pulled out. In the dust just inside the cave, catching the last of the light, I saw something small and bright. A little red cylinder. Metal, about as long as my thumb. I'd seen those before, back in the lab. Tranquilizer dart casings. I picked it up. It was empty. The needle gone. My vision tunneled. The cave walls seemed to press in. Farther back, near the wall where I'd told him to stay, there was a smear of dark on the rock. Not much, just a handprint, bigger than mine. 4 fingers. A thumb. The impression of hair ridges. It was at about my chest height. Like he'd been standing there, one hand on the wall when they hit him. I pressed my hand over it. My fingers didn't reach the tips. Outside, the wind picked up, leaves rustled. Somewhere, a raven called once. I sank down in the dust. The dart casing dug into my palm. They hadn't needed me anymore because they'd already taken him. People expect me to say I screamed, or raged, or swore I'd get revenge. I didn't. I sat there until the light went gray, and I listened to the cave breathe around me. All the anger I'd carried for years, for the lab, for the logging companies, for the deputies, for the suits, collapsed into something heavier. Guilt. I was the one who'd brought him into a human house, taught him human patterns, made him part of a world that had no place for him. I thought I was protecting him. All those years of hiding, erasing tracks, lying. I told myself I was doing the right thing, the noble thing. But in the end, when they finally came for him, it wasn't hunters. It was the same kind of people I'd left behind decades earlier. After he was taken, I found his mark on a tree, our 2 circles, but the small one, me, was crossed out. I still hear faint knocks some nights, and sometimes I swear I can smell him, like he's still close. No matter what they did to him, I know one thing. For almost 40 years, we belonged to each other.